In this video, we're going to focus on how we can create a nice Sunburst chart here. We can see here we're getting one segment here, and this segment will be divided in sub-segments here. And of course, this segment itself will be again divided into multiple sub-segments, covering only that specific area. So let's start to look how you can create a Sunburst chart in Chartjs. So let's start to look how to create a Sunburst chart in Chartjs. So the first thing that we're going to do is we have to go to chartjs3.com, getting started, this specific link, which you can find as well in the description box. So once you're on here, just copy this border template that we will be using. So copy this, and if you want to understand the code of this, make sure you watch this video here that explains it all. So then I'll just paste this in here, I'll cut this out, and then we'll put it in here, save, refresh. There we are. So now we have this. What I want to do is I want to convert this into a donut chart. We're going to save that, refresh, there we are. Now I want to remove the scale because we don't have a scale here. So once we do this, this works all very fine. What I want to do is maybe remove the legend because this has no real value for us. So say plugins, legend, and I will say display equals false. Save, there we are. Alright, so now we have this. What I want to do now is having multiple data sets here, and every data set will eventually represent one of these donut rings. So I created two more, so we have in total 3 items. But what I want to do is, when we have, for example, this donut ring or this segment, everything within this segment will be in here and everything else will be blank. So then we have only, basically this will be compressed into this area here, and of course this one here will be whatever would be here. So to do this, first of all, let's make it quite simple by using on the last data set, and this is on purpose, on the last data set we will have only 2 specific items here, and I'll just give this a different color. I'll make sure that this is a darker color. So we save this. There we are. So this is the inner ring and not the outer ring, because the outer ring will be eventually smaller and smaller. So we have this here, and although I think this is maybe just too dark, let's put it like that. There we are. Alright, now we have this, and we can say this is the inner ring. Then what we have is here the ring number 1. And finally we have the second ring, ring number 2. Save, refresh. Alright, so now we have this, and what I will do here is I want to make, I guess, 3 items here. I can just delete a few, and I'll say just use 6, 6, and 6. And finally here what I will do is I will delete this, but I will divide them by 3, or 4 segments with 3 each. If I save this, refresh, right now it's not yet working as expected. So let's start to work on the first, or the first ring here, ring number 1, and not the inner ring, but just the one in the center. So to do this, what I need to do here is again to work with the command circumference. So we're going to say a circumference, and this here allows us to control basically the ring shape, as you can see here. So this works, but there's a problem with this, of course. We need to calculate this part exactly to this. So how do we do this? Well, we can build a formula for this. By default, it's 360 for a full circle. So if I want to have this lesser here, I need to figure out how many degrees that would be. Maybe, I guess maybe 200, something like that. Of course, and we're getting close to it. Of course, this just doesn't work. Let's be honest, to figuring out like this should be done automatically. So we're going to do that. To do this, I'm going to use a callback functionality here. I just put in ctx, and I'm going to say here console log ctx to show you what is in here. If I save this, refresh, open up developer tab, right now you see it is blank here. Don't worry, because we don't return anything, but we will get some information here. You can see a lot of information that we have. What I eventually need here is a few items, and let's go, and what I will do is I will just hard code the item, and then after that we go to soft code them. So we're going to say constant of total, and the total will be the total of whatever we have here, the inner ring, because this, whatever the degree of value we need here is based on the inner ring here, whatever this would be. But this is a full circle because we start with a full circle. So we say not the total, but we're going to say these values here, whatever these two values are. So in this case, this plus that makes 30. So once we did this, the next thing what we need to do is to figure out the segment value here. What is this segment that we have? What's the value of this? So I'm going to say a constant. We're going to say a segment, or what is that? The current segment. I can give this number 18 because it is the first one of the data index here. So once we did that, the next thing what I want to do is to calculate what we call the percentage here, or the percentage segment, or basically the yeah, I guess we can say that percentage segment. However, what we need as well before I do that is the radius. So I need to know how big is our radius. In this case, the radius is a full circle 360, so it's full circle around that. This is very important. And then after that, what I really want to do is these two divide each other and then get basically the reference of that. This 18, how many or how much is it equal to this? Or how big is that slice? Basically, I'm just getting the percentage value so I can grab how many percent or how many degrees that angle is. That's basically what I'm doing here. So I hope you're able to follow along. So let's say a constant, and I'm going to give this a name, segment percentage, which is basically the radius multiplied by the current segment, which is basically number 18, divided by the total segment is 30. That's basically what we're doing here, but we can just copy this here, put the total in there, and then we multiply it by 360 for now. So if I save this and do a console log on that, let's see what we get for value here. Save, refresh. Alright, we get now number 216. So what I want to do here basically is to return, and what I'm returning is the segment percentage. If I save this, refresh, you can see here now it works exactly as expected. This is the segment, and this one matches here nicely. So that's the first part, of course. So the next one will be slightly more complicated because then we will have to do multiple things. But what I want to do first is calculate this automated. How do we calculate this automated? Well, we can just calculate the array value for this. How do we get the array value? Remember, we have the CTX here. If I just open up the developer tab and just click on this, we're going to get here the values. If I click on the data set itself, and then you can see here the data. We have all of this data here, which is basically our array. Hold on, is that the right one I'm looking at? I have a feeling I'm looking at the wrong one. Am I? Oh, yes, I am. Apparently this is correct, sorry. So, hold on, no, that's not correct. Alright, sorry, I'm getting as well confused. This is a slightly tricky topic. What I need to do is not to go into the data set itself. And what I need here is basically go to the chart object, which is just here under the prototype. Because what I need to do is, I need to go into, with this one, what I really need to do is I need to go into the data of this. This is very important. So basically, data set number 1 will get the values from the inner ring. This is really important. I hope I'm explaining this correctly to you, or that you're able to grasp that. Alright, so how do we get then this data set here? So this total, well, we can do that. We can see here the chart object, and then we can go into the data. Where are we? The data object, I guess here down. Click on that, put in there, and I'm going to say here the data sets. So as you can see here, once I click here on data set index number 2, we have here all the information here, data. Alright, so this is what I need, the data from this part. How to get there? Well, basically, let's go again, chart, all the way down here into the data object and data sets. So I'm going to say that here. I'll just say the chart.data sets. This was index number 2, I guess, dot data. So if I do that, refresh, alright, interesting. We get an error here. Data sets should be, of course, with an S. There we are. So now we have these here, which is related to 18 and 12. Alright, we grab this here, and if you are wondering how do we get this, well, there's a trick here basically as well. Let me just copy this. We can just get this one as well. So I'm going to go back into our CTX, save that, refresh, and when we click on this, this is the CTX number 100, of course, the CTX, which is the context. You can see here, we get here the dataset index value. So what I need to do is this plus 1, because it's always 1 up. I'm going to grab that, put it in here, save. We should see exactly the same 18 and 12. Alright, so that is all safe and well. Now we have this. What I want to do is I want to calculate the value for this, so that basically the total will be 30, but then in soft-coded version. So to do this, let me just hide that one and just make a new total in here in this constant, and then just grab this and make a value out of it. So to do this, what I need is we need basically this array. This is basically the array. So what I'm going to do is grab this. I'm going to say this array, and then I use the rest operator to copy this entire array. This is very important. I want to copy the array so it's not considered a string. If you exclude the rest operator, it will see it as a string value, and normally in that case you would just have like this. If you would have 1, 2, and 3, that was fine. But in our case, we want to say copy the array in its entirely with these integer values or the number values, because I also cannot calculate that. So then we say here reduce, because we want to reduce it into a single value, because basically this is what we call the reduce method. So once we have this, we're going to say here a comma b, so whatever a value is, and then plus b eventually, and then we're going to do this function error expression a plus b, and we start at a value of 0. So once we do this, my total should now be 30 as well. Let's do a console log here. Save, refresh, number 30. Alright, we have this now nicely soft coded. So there we are. We have this here. So now we have that one. The current segment is the very first one in this case. So this is index number 0 of our data. So how do we get this? Well, we can just grab this entire item, put here, and then we say index, or data index number 0, because it's the first one of this here. Remember, it's the first one of that. So I can remove all of this now. If I save this, refresh, this works. Alright, now I want to test this. What I want to do is, first of all, is I want to make sure that all of these values have the same identical color. So I'm going to put that in here 2 more times, but I will make this slightly lighter or darker based on this, and everything else here I can just copy this. That's fine. Alright, so that's usually a Sunburst that has the same value with same colors, but usually slightly different. So it could be maybe darker shades or tones. Doesn't matter, but that's alright for now. However, the center tends to be the darkest. So now this works, but let me just test this. What happens if I say this is maybe 30 instead? Save, refresh, and as you can see, this 18 still maintains, even though the arc or the segment of this is slightly different. So let's put this all back. There we are. Alright, so now we have this. Now we're going to the outer ring here, which is basically index 0. For that, we'll be using a lot of this again, but then we have to do this probably twice. So we're going to copy this entire chunk of code, put it in here. So if I save this right now, and this is of course slightly different because it's calculating here now from index number, whatever the index is, +1, it's 0, +1. So this is all fine. However, this is not really what we need. Or what we need more is 2 things. Here we have this radius of 360. Here the radius of 360 was from this, but eventually if you calculate the arc radius of this, that's a different number. To show you, I'm going to show it here. by saying console log segment percentage. And you will see that this segment percentage, if I do this, will be, there we are, 216, that's 105, just to confirm, 105. So you can see this is 216 degrees of our radius. So what I need to do now is, because now we don't have 360 anymore, no, we have 216. So this number of 216 needs to be basically in here. So it calculates this, but then of course we want to grab this segment here. So we have the percentages from this to here. This is very important. So what we're going to do now is, let's here above, we're going to two items. We have this one here. I'll just leave it as it is for now, because if we can do here probably 216. If I save that, do that, that works. But let's be honest, this would be too easy, and it doesn't work like that. So what I want to do here is calculate this radius. To calculate this radius, we have here basically this formula, and we need to just reuse that formula there to get only that specific number. So what I'm going to do is constant, and let's call this, or let's name this total number 2 equals. It is exactly the same as below, but this one is index number 1 right now because this is 0. We are currently on the 0 index because this is the index 0 of the dataset. So what I need to do here then is basically copy this, but then I say here plus 2. By doing that, I should get now the number 30 on total. So we say total number 2 equals 30, and just to make sure, because you can see I have too many values being in a console log, I want to hide everything that we don't need for now, or remove all excess. Let's delete everything we don't need here below. Alright, save that, refresh, there we are. So get now 30 at 78. That's this one here. So we're getting the right track. The next thing what I need to do is the current segment. But of course, again here, we're not talking about the current segment of index number 1. No, we need to have index number 2. So I'm going to put in number 2. And we're going to give this a name, current segment number 2. If I save that, we should get here now number 18, which is correct because 18 refers to 6 plus 6 plus 6. So what we are doing is basically we want 6 divided by 18, then we get 1/3 of it. And then from there on we can start to calculate that again. So once we did that, what I need more is eventually figure out what is the radius. So I say here constant. And I'm going to give this name radius number 2 equals. And a radius, alright. So the radius number 2 here is probably, well, first of all, 360. That's the default. But what we could do immediately, because you can see here, we have this formula. And I think we could just copy this section here. But instead of copying this, of course, multiply. We don't say segment number 2 or a segment, but we say segment number 2, the one we copied above. This here should give us the value of 216. That was the one that was at the radius that we calculated here. Alright, so let's go up. Where am I? Hold on. Oh, sorry, not in here, but here down. This was the 216. That was the value that we're looking for. So now, if we do this, we should have here radius of 216. So let's do a console log, and I'll just remove this and say radius number 2. Save, refresh, 216. Alright, so that would mean that if I do here also 216 like that. Alright, and I guess we could even just give it a single-handed value by just copying this, put it in here. And if I do that, we should have just the same response as this. Oh, hold on, or not. Let's see, what did I do? I removed this. I'm going, oh, of course. You can see here I have radius number 2, and this doesn't exist when I deleted the constant of radius 2. So if I do it like that, save, refresh, there we are. Alright, so now we've got it all. What I want to do is make sure that we just describe everything correctly. We have this, the radius here. We have this with segment 1, segment 2, and then here we have whatever the radius would be. Then from there on we continue calculating it. This is very important. So I can just leave the comments out. I'll just leave the comments out for now. If I save this, and now let's change some numbers. Let's rumble up some numbers and see if that would change it. So if I make this here 15, I'll make this one 24, and I'll make this one, well, what we could even do is put another one here, 33. Save that, refresh, and as you can see, even though we changed the numbers, this here is the segment that covers this fully, and then of course this segment is being covered by this part of the Sunburst, and maybe to make it really nice, give it an identical color. Put it like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, this, and it should be 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, save, refresh, absolutely phenomenal. So this is basically how to do it. Of course, if you would check the legend, if I would show here the legend, save, it will look a bit weird because of the items that are missing. Basically, the donut and pie chart have a different type of legend because it covers single items like these. Anyway, doesn't matter so much. The Sunburst itself works nicely, and it's absolutely phenomenal here. And you can see here the blue one, that's this here, and of course you could do the same here, and that's the most tricky part, is to recalculate consistently the data sets. But this is basically the way to do it. So if you enjoyed this video and maybe you want to put, for example, data labels or values in here, in that case I'm going to recommend you this one here, which is also an option here, is on how to add custom data labels inside or outside a donut chart in Chartjs, where you can see we're putting these numbers here with these lines or the numbers inside of the segment.